It's like building a little computer by using these single units a DNA is built out of.
We can digitize life and regenerate life from the digital world. And just as the ribosome can convert the analog message in mRNA into a protein robot, it's becoming standard now in the world of science to convert digital code into proteins, viruses, and now cells.
DNA resonance code and the brain code speak the same language. If you decipher DNA code, you will decipher the brain code. While all other research is prohibited, restricted, unfunded, the brain-computer interface is really well funded these days. Defense agencies all have open programs to develop brain-computer interface.
This could be defined as a form of entanglement of the biological atoms with the background field. An implication is that ultimately DNA could be transferred or transported, let us say teleported, immaterially and non-locally as a light or laser modulation.
Let's define the telepathy. Telepathy in Wikipedia is defined as communication from mind to mind without the use of physical senses. So we can use computer to link it to or technology to link it to the one mind and then to another mind and make an interface, transferring the information.
And you have like dial-in codes, and each frequency you give in, like do-do-do-do-do-do-do, every frequency you give in is switching on one single DNA element, making it open to take the next step. So basically what you can do with it is creating synthetic DNA or RNA that is possible to be activated with a dial-in sequence of frequencies.
But it's about something far more profound. It is concerning the impacts, such as the inability to breathe, such as having a cough with no phlegm. Rather odd for pneumonia, wouldn't you say? And things like suddenly falling over with no other signs of sickness. All of these things can be related to something completely different than a virus.
Creating synthetic DNA or RNA that is possible to be activated with a dial-in sequence of frequencies.
Did you know that this country went live with fully functional FIVEG? Here you can see the announcement from a Chinese website all the way back from 2018 in April.
So if I go to the link and copy it, and then if I go to Facebook to share it, you can't share this link. And your post couldn't be shared because this link goes against our community standards. Interesting.
But wouldn't it be great if you could do these thousands of different molecular IDs or RNAs in a single brain, and that way they're integrated. Every voxel, every pixel of every section can be aligned, and you know where you are.
I dream of the day when every young mother brings a young girl or young boy home from the hospital with a little gene card, and they said, this is the way you should prepare this child's health care.
Computers and genomics were made for each other. Genetic information is digital. It's like binary code. It just happens to use 4 digits instead of 2. It is amazingly accurate, and that's what biology gets from digital information.
Now, a decade ago, the Human Genome Project gave us a complete list of the 3 billion letters that make up the human genetic code. And people said at the time that we had the Book of Life. Now, it turned out it was harder to read than we expected. When we looked at all these genes and all the DNA, scientists found only 20,000 genes, and that makes up about 2 to 3% of all our DNA. The question became, what does the rest of this DNA do? in this model, the black balls. It was mysterious. People didn't know what it was. They actually called it the genomic dark matter, the dark matter of the genome, or worse still, junk DNA. For a while, scientists weren't sure if it did anything at all. Thanks to the Encode project, we now know what most of our DNA does. These newly revealed regions, the white ping pong balls, these are sections of DNA highlighted by the Encode project. Their role is to control what happens with our genes, and in this analogy I'm using the cherry tomatoes. So the majority of our DNA is not making proteins to build our cells and such like. What it's actually doing is controlling how these genes work. That might mean they're acting as switches to turn them off and turn them on, and where and when in the body that happens. Well, first off, it will help scientists understand how our genes operate in our bodies. These switches are incredibly crucial to what genes are doing in our bodies, and they will make the difference, for example, between how our body makes a liver cell as opposed to a kidney cell. Perhaps more importantly, the Encode project will help understand what goes wrong in scores of diseases where there's some genetic element. Now, scientists have already used the Encode data to identify 400 of these switches in the genome which feed through into diseases and other medical problems. And that is surely just the beginning of it.
In 1989, a group of scientists was assembled to decode the human genome under the direction of Dr. James Watson.
One of Watson's big motivations here was to try to recruit the best and brightest from many different disciplines, biology, but also physics, chemistry, engineering, because all of those would have to get together if this was going to work.
As you know, today and tomorrow, WHO is hosting a meeting of more than 400 scientists from around the world, both in person and virtually.
The talent turned out to be all over the world, so you have to basically make it possible for those bright minds to get engaged where they are. They're not going to all...
Tomorrow, WHO is hosting a meeting of more than 400 scientists from around the world.
We're working in a direction where the molecular recording devices we have will be able to read out optically, but via the circulatory system. You basically convert DNA information into ionic information into computer information. So that's going from DNA to ions, but for the brain, we're interested in the opposite, going from ions to DNA.
And this is a completely new technology that, like the Morgellons, is light-based. It's like building a little computer by using these single units DNA is built out of.
Scientists send digital code to each other instead of sending genes or proteins. Now we're in the process of building a much smaller, simpler, what I call digital conversion device. So my digital biological converter is going to work somewhat like a telephone, where it takes digital waves, it converts it into sound waves so you can hear it. These proteins have been described as nature's robots. And if you think about it, for every single task in the cell, there is a unique protein to carry out that task. It's programmed when to go on, when to go off. And it does this based on its structure. It doesn't have consciousness, it doesn't have a control from a mind or a higher center. Everything a protein does is built into its linear code derived from the DNA code.
Last week, I told you that we had engaged WHO's network of country representatives, as well as the United Nations resident coordinators in countries, to brief them on the outbreak and inform them about the steps they can take. I also briefed Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and we agreed to leverage the power of the entire UN system in the response. And we'll also coordinate the whole UN response. and will also coordinate the whole UN response. As you know, today and tomorrow, WHO is hosting a meeting of more than 400 scientists from around the world. D for disease, so COVID. D for disease.
The DNA in the nucleus is connected electromagnetically with microtubules in the axon. And you can see on the photograph, it's known that microtubules surround the nucleus, and there is an interface, electromagnetic, not mechanical, not chemical, but electromagnetic interface between microtubules and DNA.
And so the resonant frequency of the DNA is what they use to fine-tune the technology to take total control of your entire body, spirit, soul, being, and mind. It's total not only mind control, it's total human being control.
It's becoming standard now in the world of science to convert digital code into proteins, viruses, and now cells.
These are just words for thought and information that I found over hours of researching. Thank you for watching, and much love to you all.